What are war crimes? Most people have never even heard of them. What about the Geneva Conventions? They're such a vital part of our history, yet so many people have forgotten them. And what's the ICC? And what's the controversy around it? These things are such important parts of our history, especially now while Ukraine is fighting Russia. These topics will be addressed now more than ever to keep these countries safe. We're your hosts, Addison Blanchard,
Orly Aine,
and Aine McGonigal,
here to explain to you how war crimes are affecting Ukraine and Russia.
To start, we need to go back in time a bit, to the Geneva Conventions, founded by Henry Dunant, who found wounded soldiers on the battlefield that weren't receiving any help since they were on the opposite side of the fight. Henry Dunant decided to set guidelines of the war so the war wasn't as devastating and would cause less harm. He started the Geneva Conventions and made treaties that were signed by 12 states in 1867. The Geneva Conventions established the rules of war. One of these rules was about the Red Cross. The Geneva Conventions created the Red Cross. The Red Cross was designed to save and help wounded soldiers. One of the Red Cross rules was you cannot shoot at or hurt the Red Cross because the Red Cross helps both sides. Both sides have to let them through with no harm or hassle. The Geneva Conventions also made rules about detainees. These rules state detainees must be fed well, must be given water, and must have connection with loved ones if they choose to. What are the specific rules of war? Let's pass that on to Orly to talk about.
One of the main ideas of the rules of war is to limit civilian suffering. War is scary enough already, but evidence found by UN investigators show that Putin has not only broken war crimes, maximizing civilian suffering, but Russian soldiers have also committed many war crimes and tried covering it up. One of the most obvious war crimes is the bombing of civilian areas. Most Ukrainian citizens have fled Ukraine, but some are not as lucky and have to stay in Ukraine. There are always safe areas in Ukraine, and it is always safe to check if an area is a civilian area or an area with military infrastructure. But apparently Russia has not. There were many bombings in areas that showed no military bases or infrastructure, and rogue bombs have destroyed at least 8 civilian houses. And if that wasn't enough, Russia has also been using BAM bombs called cluster bombs. Cluster bombs are big bombs filled with many smaller bombs that spread across a wide area, causing mass harm. At least 9,940 Ukrainian civilians have been killed by Russian bombings, and up to 2,003,450 wounded, whether it be direct impact or fallen buildings. The next feat of civilian suffering is the harm Russian soldiers have caused. Russian soldiers have captured the Ukrainian town of Bucha and have recently reclaimed the town of Izium. There are burial grounds made by Russian soldiers of Ukrainian citizens. Autopsies have shown that before death, these citizens were tortured and murdered. Russian soldiers have taken Ukrainian civilians and sexually abused or raped them. This was an age range of 4 years old to 82 years old. They held Ukrainian civilians in prison cells for weeks without proper care. They did beatings, electric shock, forced nudity, and would occasionally force relatives to witness these crimes. These were obviously horrible crimes, but how would they be punished for them? Let's have Orly talk about that.
There is a court called the ICC. The ICC is a court called the International Criminal Court. What the ICC does is take individuals and investigate and find evidence of them doing very serious crimes that will affect the international community. The ICC has claimed areas all around the world. Putin, the president of Russia, knows that if he steps onto those areas, he can and or will get arrested. A man named Stefan Rapp says either Putin goes to court in the Hague, or he is increasingly isolated and dies with this hanging over his head. A man named Joseph Kony is a part of the Russian army. He was captured and brought to the ICC. He was charged with many crimes such as murder, enslavement, cruel treatment, rape, attacks on civilians, and more. He was not arrested.
So how have war crimes affected the recent war in Ukraine? Well, they're supposed to protect both sides of the war, but that doesn't seem to be working. Are the punishments enough to prevent these crimes? If they are, then why are people committing them? And should we update these rules that were made 100 years ago? Those are all questions you'll have to answer on your own. We're your hosts, Anya McGonigal,
Addison Blanchard,
And Orly Egan.
signing off.